The Butterfly Effect, Fluttered Impact Chapter 1. The Beijing Incident. The air was thick with the aroma of sizzling lamb skewers and the raucous laughter spilling out from the crowded hutongs. Sarah Chen, disguised as a local tourist with a wide-brimmed straw hat and oversized sunglasses, blended seamlessly into the bustling Beijing night market. As she navigated through the labyrinthine alleyways, her eyes darted from side to side, scanning the faces in the crowd. To the casual observer, she was just another tourist soaking in the vibrant atmosphere. But beneath the facade, Sarah was a seasoned CIA operative on a routine surveillance mission. Her target, General Li Wei, a high-ranking Chinese official rumored to be involved in illicit arms deals. Sarah had been tracking him for weeks, patiently waiting for a slip-up, a moment of vulnerability that would expose his clandestine activities. Tonight, it seemed her patience was finally paying off. As she rounded a corner, her eyes caught a glimpse of General Li entering a secluded tea house. Sarah's pulse quickened. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for. Sarah discreetly followed General Li inside, keeping a safe distance as he was escorted to a private room at the back. She settled into a nearby booth, her eyes fixed on the door, her mind racing through possible scenarios. Minutes turned into an eternity. Sarah's patience was wearing thin. Just as she was about to give up, the door to the private room creaked open. General Li emerged, his face flushed with anger. Behind him, a tall, lanky Western man with a mop of unruly blonde hair followed, a smug grin plastered on his face. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen this man before, but something about him set off alarm bells in her head. He exuded an air of confidence, an aura of danger. The two men exchanged a few hushed words in Mandarin, their voices barely audible above the din of the tea house. Then, the Western man handed General Li a small, metallic object. It was too far away for Sarah to make out what it was, but the intensity of the exchange sent a shiver down her spine. As the two men parted ways, Sarah made a split-second decision. She slipped out of the tea house, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to follow that Western man. He was the key to unraveling this mystery. Sarah hailed a taxi and gave the driver a vague description of the Western man, instructing him to follow the black sedan that had just pulled away from the curb. The taxi weaved through the chaotic Beijing traffic, keeping the sedan in sight. The sedan eventually pulled into a gated compound on the outskirts of the city. Sarah paid the taxi driver and watched as the sedan disappeared behind the imposing iron gates. Sarah crouched in the shadows, her mind racing. She had to find a way inside that compound. But how? As she pondered her next move, a sudden gust of wind rustled the leaves on a nearby tree. A small, delicate butterfly fluttered down, landing on Sarah's outstretched hand. Sarah stared at the butterfly, mesmerized by its intricate patterns. A memory flashed through her mind, a childhood story her grandmother used to tell her about the butterfly effect, the idea that a small, seemingly insignificant event can have far-reaching consequences. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. Was this a sign? Was this butterfly a harbinger of something greater? Sarah looked up at the imposing gates of the compound, a newfound determination in her eyes. She didn't know what awaited her inside, but she knew she had to find out. The fate of the world might just depend on it. Chapter 2. Ripple effects. The sterile glow of the fluorescent lights in the CIA headquarters at Langley cast a harsh light on Sarah's face as she presented her report to her superiors. The conference room was filled with the hushed whispers of high-ranking officials, their faces etched with concern and skepticism. Sarah laid out the details of the Beijing incident with meticulous precision, describing the clandestine meeting between General Li and the mysterious Western man, the exchange of the unknown object, her pursuit of the Western man to the gated compound. As she spoke, a sense of unease settled over the room. The officials exchanged furtive glances, their expressions a mix of disbelief and unease. When Sarah finished her report, a heavy silence hung in the air. Agent Chen, Director Edwards finally spoke, his voice a gravelly baritone that commanded attention. Your report is concerning. But I must say, it lacks concrete evidence. Without proof, we can't act on mere suspicion. Sarah's stomach churned. She had expected some skepticism, but this outright dismissal caught her off guard. Sir, with all due respect, I believe this incident warrants further investigation. The implications could be dire. Director Edwards steepled his fingers, his eyes fixed on Sarah. Agent Chen, We appreciate your dedication to your duty. However, we must prioritize our resources. We can't afford to chase shadows based on a hunch. Sarah felt a surge of frustration rising within her. Sir, this is not a hunch. This is a potential threat to national security. Agent Chen, Director Edwards interrupted, his voice firm. I understand your concerns. But I must remind you that you are not in a position to make those kinds of judgments. Your job is to gather intelligence, not to interpret it. Sarah bit back a retort. She knew better than to argue with her superiors, but her gut told her something was wrong. There was more to this incident than met the eye. As she left the conference room, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was afoot. Why were her superiors so quick to dismiss her report? Were they protecting someone? Or were they simply blind to the danger lurking beneath the surface? Back in her office, Sarah pored over her notes from the Beijing mission, searching for clues that might have been overlooked. As she reread her observations, a memory flashed through her mind, a conversation she had overheard between two of General Lee's aides weeks before the incident. The Americans are getting too close, one aide had whispered to the other. We need to accelerate our plans. Don't worry, the other aide had replied. The butterfly has already flapped its wings. The ripple effects will soon be felt around the world. Sarah had dismissed the conversation at the time, assuming it was just idle chatter. But now, in light of the recent events, the words took on a chilling new meaning. What if the butterfly they were referring to was the exchange between General Lee and the Western man? What if the ripple effects were the catastrophic events that were about to unfold? Sarah's mind raced as she connected the dots. She realized that the Beijing incident was just the tip of the iceberg. There was a larger conspiracy at play, a conspiracy that threatened to plunge the world into chaos. Sarah knew she couldn't rely on her superiors to uncover the truth. She had to take matters into her own hands. She had to find out who the Western man was, what he had given to General Lee, and what their ultimate plan was. The fate of the world might just depend on it. Chapter 3. The Defector. The grainy surveillance footage flickered on Sarah's computer screen, the pixelated figures moving through the snow-covered streets of Pyongyang like ghosts. It was a coded message, a clandestine plea for help. The defector was Dr. Kim Yong-chul, a high-ranking nuclear physicist with the DPRK's Ministry of Atomic Energy Industry. Sarah's heart pounded against her ribs. This was her chance, a thread to pull that might unravel the mystery shrouding the Beijing incident. Dr. Kim claimed to have vital information about a covert weapons program, one potentially linked to the object exchanged between General Lee and the enigmatic Western man. The risks were immense, but the potential reward was too great to ignore. If Dr. Kim's information was accurate, it could expose the true nature of the conspiracy and prevent a catastrophic conflict. Sarah tapped a series of commands into her keyboard, activating a secure channel to the CIA station in Seoul. This is Mockingbird, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I have a high-priority target. We need to exfiltrate a North Korean defector immediately. The voice on the other end crackled with urgency. Mockingbird, this is Sparrow. We're on standby. What's the target status? He's a nuclear physicist, Sarah replied. He claims to have critical intel on a weapons program. Time is of the essence. Understood, Mockingbird. We'll initiate Operation Exodus. Stay safe. The line went dead, leaving Sarah alone with her racing thoughts. She had set the wheels in motion, but the path ahead was fraught with peril. North Korea's border security was notoriously tight, and the defector's extraction would be a high-stakes gamble. A wave of nausea washed over Sarah as she recalled the last time she had attempted an exfiltration in North Korea. It had ended in disaster, with her partner captured and tortured, the mission compromised. The memory haunted her dreams, a constant reminder of the brutal realities of her profession. But this time was different. This time, the stakes were higher, the consequences graver. Sarah couldn't afford to fail. Not again. As Sarah prepared for the perilous journey to the DMZ, a flashback from her childhood surfaced. She saw herself as a young girl, watching her father, a Chinese diplomat, meticulously fold origami cranes. He had told her a story about 1,000 origami cranes granting a wish, a symbol of hope and resilience in the face of adversity. Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn piece of paper. Unfolding it, she revealed a single, delicate origami crane, a gift from her father on her 13th birthday. A bittersweet smile touched her lips. It was a reminder of her past, of the sacrifices she had made to serve her country. But it was also a symbol of hope, a belief in the power of small actions to shape the course of history. With newfound resolve, Sarah packed her gear, her mind already racing through the myriad scenarios that could unfold. She knew the risks, the dangers, the potential for heartbreak. But she also knew that she had a duty to fulfill, a mission to complete. The butterfly had flapped its wings in Beijing, and the ripples were spreading across the globe. Sarah was determined to ride those ripples, to follow them to their source, to uncover the truth that lay hidden in the heart of darkness. As she embarked on the treacherous journey to the DMZ, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment where the butterfly effect would lead her. Would she be able to save the world from the impending catastrophe? Or would she become another casualty of the shadowy war that was being waged behind closed doors? The answers awaited her in the frozen wasteland of the Korean peninsula. Chapter 4. Ghosts from the past. The biting wind howled through the gaps in Sarah's thermal layers as she trekked across the frozen Imjin River, the DMZ a menacing shadow in the distance. Each crunch of ice under her boots echoed in the silence, a stark reminder of the danger that lurked in every direction. Her mind, however, was miles away, replaying a scene from her past, her first mission in Hong Kong a decade ago. She had been a rookie then, eager to prove herself, her naivete a stark contrast to the hardened operative she had become. The mission had been to extract a low-level triad informant, but it had gone horribly wrong. A seemingly routine handover had turned into a bloodbath, the informant gunned down in a crowded market, Sarah barely escaping with her life. The image of the informant's lifeless eyes, staring vacantly at the sky, had been seared into her memory, a constant reminder of the fragility of life in her line of work. As Sarah approached the pre-arranged rendezvous point, a cluster of abandoned farmhouses on the North Korean side of the DMZ, a sense of déjà vu washed over her. The eerie silence, the biting cold, the palpable tension in the air, it all felt eerily familiar. Suddenly, a figure emerged from one of the farmhouses, his silhouette barely visible in the moonlight. It was Dr. Kim, his face gaunt and etched with fear, his eyes darting nervously from side to side. Sarah raised her hand in a pre-arranged signal, a silent code that conveyed safety and reassurance. Dr. Kim hesitated for a moment, then cautiously approached, his breath forming a frosty cloud in the frigid air. "Agent Chen?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Are you the contact?" "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice barely audible. "I'm here to help you." Without another word, Dr. Kim handed Sarah a worn leather briefcase, his eyes pleading for her to understand its significance. Sarah clutched the briefcase, its weight a tangible reminder of the burden of secrets it carried. As they turned to make their way back across the frozen river, a harsh spotlight pierced the darkness, illuminating their figures like deer caught in headlights. A voice boomed across the DMZ, a chilling mix of Korean and Mandarin. "Stop right there. You are surrounded. Surrender yourselves immediately." Sarah's heart sank. They had been compromised. The North Koreans had anticipated their move, had set a trap. Memories of the Hong Kong debacle flooded her mind, the panic, the desperation, the utter helplessness. Sarah couldn't let history repeat itself. She wouldn't let Dr. Kim suffer the same fate as her informant. "Run," she shouted, pushing Dr. Kim towards the river. "I'll cover you, Doctor." Kim hesitated, his eyes wide with terror. Sarah grabbed his arm and dragged him along, their boots crunching through the ice as they raced towards the South Korean side. Gunfire erupted behind them, the deafening cracks echoing across the frozen landscape. Sarah felt a searing pain in her shoulder as a bullet grazed her skin, but she ignored it, her focus solely on getting Dr. Kim to safety. As they reached the riverbank, a hail of bullets rained down around them, shattering the ice and sending shards flying through the air. Sarah pushed Dr. Kim into the icy water, urging him to swim across while she provided covering fire. The North Korean soldiers closed in, their shouts a chorus of aggression and triumph. Sarah fired her last magazine, emptying the clip into the darkness. A deafening silence followed, broken only by the sound of Dr. Kim's desperate gasps as he struggled against the current. Sarah knew she couldn't hold them off much longer. She had to make a decision, a choice that would determine the fate of the mission, and perhaps, the world.